What's up, musicologists? It's another Amari Music Talk. It's 2025. If you're brand new to the channel, welcome. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. And this episode, we are going to clear up a major misconception about the identity of a certain individual in a certain photograph that had been circulating. Hopefully by the time this broadcast that this is over and done with, because I'm sick of seeing it. I'm sick of correcting folks about it. But we're going to talk about this photo, which has been circulating amongst not only just Prince fan pages, but a couple of different music pages, like Worldwide Funk on Facebook was one of those pages. And it involves a photograph that was taken in the 1970s, mid 1970s, 1976 to be exact. And people that have been posting this photograph has been saying that this person is Prince. Well, it is not Prince. But here's the thing. For me, I'm going to say this. If you just didn't know, if you innocently posted this saying, oh, this is Prince when he was young and little. If you just didn't know, I'm going to give you a pass. If you were young and you didn't check in with, any of your elders, parents, grandparents that were around in the 70s, I'm going to give you a pass. But I think it got to the point that this started circulating with what I call these bots, these sort of propagandists. And it's not just print stuff, because it's just the way social media has been. It's one of the reasons I left X, Twitter, because that stuff is starting to pile up. And I think a lot of people that left X, I think now these bots and scammers and idiots and losers are making their way to other social media sites and posting the same thing. So, there's been a lot of pushback. Like I said, if you innocently posted this because you just didn't know, based on, how old you are, hey, where you grew up, where, Prince might be one of the, if not the only one, but one of the few Black artists that you listen to, and you're not well versed on everything in the 60s or 70s or even the 80s. Again, I'm gonna give you a pass. I'm gonna let you slide. But again, these bots, these idiots, these propagandists, like, I know when I was responding, kind of getting my history confused, I kept calling it Typhoid Mary, which was a huge thing during, I think, mostly World War II. But I was confusing it with the actual way that propaganda was utilized during wartime, which it didn't have a specific name. But if you do your research, it narrows down like a lot of different individuals that have been prominent during wartime. And what it is, the propaganda thing, what it was designed to do is you're out on the front lines, you fighting the war and everything, and you're getting these radio broadcasts from the enemy, and they're saying all kind of, basically all the stupid stuff you see on social media now. It was like that, but just on radio, and it was basically designed to weaken your resolve, destroy your morale, psychological warfare of the mind, and basically tried to psychologically convince you to, give up and surrender, or give up and quit and all this other stuff. And basically that's what, when you see a lot of this social media, like I said, if it's not just idiots, then yeah, it's that type of thing that's going on. And just, like I say, you got to be careful, keep your own mind. But anyway, back to the identity, the real identity of this person in the photograph. And the person in this photograph, for those who don't know, because a lot of people in the comments have been correcting those that didn't know, this is Foster Sylvers. He was a member, or still is a member, of the family act known as the Sylvers. And if you've come up in the 70s, you should know who the Sylvers are. Um, Brief history, they were a family. It was like 10 kids. The parents were well educated in music. The father taught the children harmonies. The mother was an opera singer. Um, if you go on YouTube, you might be able to find it, but there is a video I'm going to put in the show notes. There's a cat named Peterkin. He's a musician, songwriter, producer, and he did this phenomenal video about the Sylvers. Primarily their pre, like they had some, some hits and some really strong albums, but it really wasn't until 1976 to where I would say I don't want to say crossed over, but they had some major success with Boogie Fever, Hotline, High School Dance, and tracks like that. But this guy's video covers that kind of period prior to that. And then there's another video I'm going to put in the description. There was a concert that they did in 2017. And I mean, I hate to use the word they still got it, but I mean, they didn't lose it. Let's put it that way. We're not going to say they still got it. They never lost it. Okay. And we're going to talk about Leon Sylvers in a minute because he was like the elder brother. And you may know that name, Leon Sylvers the third. By all means, check it out. Shout out in the comments if Leon Sylvers was one of your favorite producers in, not only the 70s with the Sylvers, but with Solar Records in the 80s. Shout that out. But Foster Sylvers, again, he was kind of like a, you know, sort of like I want to say Michael Jackson 2.0, or, once he got into the group, it was like, okay, well, we're going to, get some of that Michael Jackson money with Foster. And again, all of the children are adept at, not only just singing, but writing, producing, great instrumentalists, very self-contained when they wanted to be. And I mean, where the Jackson Five struggled with that at Motown at first, and it took even a few years after they left Motown to kind of get that type of respect on the production and songwriting tip. The Sylvers had it from day one, especially the first 2 or 3 albums that they did. It was one of those things. Leon did all the production work and the songwriting. Well, we're going to have to do this another day, taking a deeper dive into the Sylvers. But as far as Foster Sylvers, he too is adept at producing, adept at writing, musicianship. If you look at some of the Shalimar albums, especially my favorite, Friends, he's credited as a musician, and I think as a writer on some of those. But also, you may remember Foster Sylvers' first hit record as a solo act, like I said, competing with Michael Jackson, the track Misdemeanor. For you hip hop heads, that song was sampled by, shout out in the comments if you know. If you know. Doom, 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 doom. Yeah, boy, that was the track then, now, always, but definitely check it out. Definitely shout out, the Sylvers tracks that you might remember. Wish That I Could Talk to You. Shout that out in the comments if you know that track. Fool's Paradise, another classic. Funky as heck too. TCB, another funky track produced by Leon Sylvers III. Like I said, their big hit, Boogie Fever, which is on the Showcase album, 1976. Um, Also, there was one track that Leon Sylvers the third produced, which was Freestyle. And there's clips of there's a clip of them on Soul Train doing that track that you can find on YouTube as well. But again, Hotline, High School Dance. You know, this group was literally, I think, if you're talking like 75, 76, or 74, 75, 76, the Sylvers were definitely giving the Jackson Five a run for their money, because at this point, Motown wasn't interested in promoting them, producing them, although those albums like Get It Together, um, Dancing Machine, Moving Violation, those are really my favorite albums of the Jackson Five Motown era. And as beloved as those albums are amongst that fan base, they weren't major sellers. They barely would get, the singles would barely make it to the charts or the top of the charts. Where, like you said, you had Boogie Fever, Hotline, High School Dance. They were getting the radio play. They were topping the charts, and this is when disco was starting to really come up. They were kind of at the forefront of that with those particular singles. And ironically, those were written and produced by Fonz Mizell, who was one of the corporation, which was the songwriting and production team that was behind the actual Jackson 5 hits, I Want You Back, ABC, Love You Save, and tracks like that, Mama's Pearl, and things like that. So, forget forget the Osmonds. Forget the Osmonds. Jackson 5 weren't threatened by the Osmonds. It was the Sylvers that was on those heels like that back then. And again, one of the reasons why I do this show is when you run across situations where you have people or generations that just, have either they forgot or they just don't know, how significant certain groups, certain artists were. Yeah, we got Prince. Yeah, we got Michael Jackson. Yeah, we got, whatever, George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic. We got, the major players. But there's a lot of, like the old show used to be, unsung, which I was glad that show existed. The Sylvers also have an episode of that too, I believe. Um, where it's like, yeah, remember, oh, yeah, that was great music. Those were great artists back then. So that's been my mission with this show. Um, but with again, the Sylvers, when Leon Sylvers III sort of left the family act to go work with Dick Griffey, when Dick Griffey started Solar Records and became that in-house producer, yeah, he brought a lot of the siblings over. Again, Foster is credited as sometimes a producer on certain deep cut tracks by Shalimar or the Whispers. Um, Also, too, shout out if you remember Janet Jackson's very first album, and no, it wasn't Control. Her very first album, side two of that album, Foster Sylvers is a producer of that. Charmaine Sylvers was a writer of Shalimar, co-writer of Shalimar's A Night to Remember. But she also has a couple of tracks on that very first Janet album. And my favorite off of that album, again, produced by Foster Sylvers, my favorite is that the last track, Come Give Your Love to Me, because it kind of had that new wave kind of funk, a little bit of funk, but that new wave, it was hitting hard. Down, 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 down. That's my favorite track on that particular album. So, I mean, again, we always kind of think of this, where Prince does everything. And yes, he was great. Yeah, yeah, he was. It's become a cliche now. Yes, a modern day Mozart, but he wasn't the only young, prolific black genius that was out there. It's just that, sometimes you only get the one that reaches those heights, but it doesn't make any of these other artists any less significant, which is the Sylvers. And getting back to this photo, that photo was taken in 1976. And in doing the homework for that, there's an issue of Ebony Jr., which was sort of like Ebony magazine, but it was geared towards kids. And he was on the cover of that, which is where that photo originated from. Like I say, if I'm going to hit you with the facts, I'm going to do my homework. And I get it. Sometimes I've gotten things wrong too. But that was 1976. Prince was still in high school at the time. And yes, and Prince has some years over Foster, with Prince being born in 58, Foster being born in 1962. So he's got some years, but the Sylvers were famous long before and put in their dues long before Prince even got out of high school. They put in the kind of dues that, Prince had to put in different kind of dues, but the advantage was because he was so prolific and he had like a management that believed in him and fought for him to get the kind of creative control once he was signed to a record deal, to be and utilize that opportunity and make it work. Yeah, the Sylvers, they had to battle all kind of adversity. Leon, prolific writer, but wasn't allowed to produce on those first couple of albums. When they signed with Capitol and they had those major hits, he was only limited to like maybe two or three tracks on the album. But as you see, they fought hard though. It was like, okay, well, that may not have been picked for the single, but we're gonna play that song on Soul Train for sure. So, but 1976, and again, for those that don't know, you've seen pictures of Prince around that time, and he doesn't look like that. He wasn't that young. He looks like the cover of For You in 1976 or 1975 even. That's what he looked like. He didn't look like that. And that wasn't from 1972 or anything like that. And you've seen Prince in 1972. He wasn't that tall. And you've seen with the that news clip that surfaced of him during the Minneapolis school teacher strike, and they got him on camera. He doesn't look like that photo. This stuff is on YouTube. You can Google this stuff. You can find it. Just take, before you post something, do your homework first. Do your homework. But thought we'd take this episode to give the Sylvers some justice. Like I said, we covered, Foster Sylvers, some of his work as a writer, producer. Like I said, those Solar records, those are my favorites. Like I said, Leon Sylvers the third, to me, practically built Solar Records along with Dick Griffey. I know the first two singles I got in 1980 was The Whispers and The Beat Goes On, and Dynasty, which Leon Sylvers was the main producer and writer for, or one of the writers for. And eventually, even though you see him in the videos with the band, he didn't officially join the band to like the third album or so. But Dynasty's, oh man, why am I drawing a blank? It's my favorite song too. I Just Begun to Love You is the track. Shout out if you remember that track. Don't want to be a freak, but I can't help myself. The B side of I've Just Begun to Love You, the B side of that track, which was the song was originally on Dynasty's first album, but even before Prince, I was always checking things out like the B side or the deep cut album track. But the B side, if you feel like giving love, dial my number. That track, just a lot of tracks that really, to me, that particular track should have been an A side. but you know, the whispers, but that made me really before even Prince again, as far as songwriting, that the Solar Records to me, because that was my Motown, that was my generation's Motown, you know, at 14, 15 years old, you know, coming up 1980, 1981, that was that was my Motown for me, you know, my generation. So I always wanted to kind of write in that kind of style, in that vein. You know, like I said, before Prince, before the time, before Jam and Lewis, before all of that, you know, for me, that was kind of the go-to. You know, that was like, oh, this is the this is the place to be. You know, this is the one to take a look at. And like I said, looking at the liner notes, and like I said, him giving a lot of his, you know, siblings like Foster a shot on, like I said, co-writing or playing on some of the records or producing, you know, some of the album cuts and things like that. You know, that's pretty cool. And like I said, check out those two videos. I'm going to put in the show notes as well. But what do you think? You guys remember Foster Sylvers? You remember the Sylvers, the big, the afros? Man, that it was like I wish I could have had an afro that large, but I never got that chance. You know, I kind of had like the early on sort of the Marvin Gaye, Curtis Mayfield. In fact, that Peterkin video, he talks about that too. It's like that was kind of my lane for a couple of years, a few years anyway. And he eventually got close to that. But then by the time I got close to that, then it was Jerry Curl time. So so anyway, do you guys remember the Sylvers? Shout out your favorite Sylvers album, your Sylvers song. Shout that out in the comments. We're going to do even deeper dives on not only the Sylvers, but also Leon Sylvers III and his work on solo records. Look for that in future episodes as well. But until next episode, also become a Patreon supporter. Get early access on videos, bonus content. There's a lot of stuff to check out now. And right now, there is 50% off any tier. And the promo code is 9B404. YouTube, hit like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And till next episode, create your day, create your life. Peace.